Have you ever noticed how a forest goes quiet right before something terrible happens? Tonight, we're stepping off the safe path and into places where the trees don't just watch, they hunt. These are forests that remember every scream, every mistake, and never let you leave unchanged. As the shadows close in, ask yourself one question. Would you survive the night? Stay with me till the end, because one of these films will crawl under your skin and stay there. If you enjoy dark stories like this, like, share, and subscribe, so you never walk alone into the woods again. 1. The Ritual, 2017. 4 old friends enter a silent Scandinavian forest to honor the dead, but the forest has its own memory. And it does not forgive. They didn't plan to get lost. No one ever does. At first, the forest feels almost polite, tall trees, cold air, the kind of quiet that seems peaceful after city noise. But listen closely. Do you hear how that silence presses back? The ritual doesn't rush to scare you. It waits. Like the forest itself, it watches you walk deeper, step by step, until turning back feels impossible. What makes this film linger isn't just the creature hiding among the trees, it's the weight the characters carry with them. Guilt hangs heavier than fog. Every broken branch feels like an accusation. As the men argue, stumble, and slowly unravel, the forest seems to respond, reshaping itself around their fear. Have you ever noticed how fear makes familiar places feel wrong? Paths twist, distances stretch, time loses its meaning. This forest doesn't need to chase them. It knows they'll break on their own. There's a moment, quiet, almost gentle, when you realize this isn't just a survival story. It's about punishment, about rituals we never meant to perform, promises we never meant to break. The deeper they go, the more the forest reflects what they refuse to face. And when the nightmares begin, you're left wondering, is the forest haunting them, or is it answering something they brought with them? The creature itself is revealed slowly, respectfully, as if the film knows that true horror shouldn't be rushed. It feels ancient, patient, rooted in folklore older than fear itself. Not a monster that jumps out to scream, but one that waits until you kneel. And when you finally see it clearly, ask yourself, would you run, or would you submit? What the ritual does brilliantly is invite you into the forest with the characters. You don't just watch them make bad decisions, you feel the pull that leads them there. Haven't we all chosen the wrong path just to avoid discomfort? Haven't we all carried guilt into places we hoped would cleanse us? By the time the film ends, the forest doesn't feel like a location anymore. It feels like a presence. One that stays with you long after the screen goes dark. So tell me, if you were in their place, would you have taken the shortcut? Or would you have trusted your instincts and stayed on the path? Let me know in the comments. 2. Deliverance, 1972. A weekend escape into the wilderness turns into a brutal lesson. Some forests don't test your courage. They strip it away. Before the river starts screaming, Deliverance whispers. The forest opens like an invitation, green and wide, promising freedom from schedules, cities, and consequences. 4 men arrive believing nature is something to conquer, something to laugh about over beer and bravado. And for a moment, it almost lets them believe that. Almost. Then the woods lean in closer, and everything changes. This isn't a forest filled with monsters or ancient curses. That's what makes it terrifying. The danger here breathes, watches, waits. Trees become walls. The river becomes a force with its own cruel rhythm. Every wrong turn feels permanent. And as the men drift farther from civilization, something uncomfortable surfaces. Who are you when there are no rules left to protect you? There's a famous scene everyone remembers, but the true horror of Deliverance isn't a single moment. It's the slow realization that help is not coming. The forest doesn't care about your morals, your plans, or your panic. It doesn't need to chase you. It simply removes your exits and lets fear do the rest. Have you ever felt that kind of isolation, where the silence is so heavy it feels judgmental? What makes this film unforgettable is how it turns masculinity itself into a fragile mask. Confidence collapses, friendship fractures, survival becomes ugly, desperate, and morally gray. You start asking questions you never wanted to ask. How far would I go to get out alive? What part of myself would I bury out here? The forest in Deliverance feels alive not because it moves, but because it remembers. Every scream echoes, every choice lingers, and when violence erupts, it feels disturbingly real, messy, sudden, and irreversible. There's no heroic music telling you what to feel, just the cold understanding that once you cross a line, you can never fully come back. As the story pushes forward, the men don't just fight the wilderness, they fight themselves. Guilt follows them like a shadow between the trees. Even when the river finally releases them, you can tell something has stayed behind, or perhaps something has come back with them. That's the quiet cruelty of this film. Survival doesn't mean victory. By the end, the forest fades from view, but its presence doesn't. It lingers in the eyes, in the silence between words, in the secrets that can never be spoken aloud. So let me ask you, do you think Deliverance is a horror movie about nature, or about what humans become when no one is watching? Would you have made the same choices to survive? Share your thoughts below. 3. Eden Lake, 2008. A quiet forest getaway turns into a nightmare where the trees witness everything, and choose not to intervene. It starts with a sound you can't unhear, laughter, drifting through the trees, sharp and careless. In Eden Lake, the forest doesn't roar or whisper ancient curses. It simply stands there, watching. A young couple arrives looking for peace, water, space to breathe. You've been there before, haven't you? That moment when you think you've finally escaped the noise of the world. But what if the noise follows you, and grows teeth? This forest feels deceptively ordinary. No supernatural signs, no warnings carved into bark. Just a lake, trees, and the uneasy sense that you are being observed. The tension builds not from what you see, but from what refuses to leave. Every encounter tightens the air. Every glance feels a second too long. And slowly, painfully, you realize that nature isn't the threat here, it's the stage. What makes Eden Lake so unsettling is how real it feels. There's no comfort of fantasy to hide behind. The fear comes from human cruelty, amplified by isolation. The forest traps sound, swallows cell signals, and removes witnesses. Ask yourself this. How safe are you when no one can hear you scream? When the rules you trust simply stop applying? As the situation spirals, the forest becomes a moral vacuum. Violence escalates not with cinematic flair, but with shocking speed and ugliness. You're not invited to enjoy it. You're forced to endure it. And that's the point. The trees stand indifferent as lines are crossed, by attackers, by victims, by anyone desperate enough to survive. Have you ever wondered how far fear could push you before you stop recognizing yourself? Unlike many horror films, Eden Lake offers no relief in intelligence or bravery. Smart choices fail. Good intentions backfire. The forest doesn't reward logic or kindness. It only provides space for consequences to unfold. And as hope drains away, you feel something worse than fear creeping in: inevitability. The final act hits like a punch you never see coming. Not because it's loud, but because it's cruelly plausible. It leaves you staring at the screen, heart racing, asking questions you don't want answered. Was escape ever possible? Or was the forest always going to claim its silence in the end? When the credits roll, Eden Lake doesn't let go. It follows you into that uncomfortable place where horror meets reality. Where you're forced to admit that sometimes, the scariest forests are the ones closest to home. So let me ask you, do you see Eden Lake as a horror movie? Or a warning? And if you were trapped there, do you believe you would have survived, without losing yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. 4. The Hallow, 2015. A family moves to the edge of an ancient forest, only to learn that some woods don't want to be lived near. And they never forget trespassers. The first warning comes softly, almost politely, a look from the locals. A fence no one explains. In the Hallow, the forest doesn't explode into horror, it seeps into the cracks of everyday life. A new home, a crying baby, a sense that the trees are standing just a little too close. Have you ever felt that subtle pressure? The feeling that you're not welcome, even when no one says it out loud? This forest isn't just scenery, it's lineage. It carries old rules whispered through generations. Rules modern people no longer believe in. And that disbelief is dangerous. As night falls, the woods begin to breathe differently. Branches scrape like fingers. Shadows linger too long. The film invites you to lean in, to listen, Because what you don't hear is just as terrifying as what you do. What makes the Hallow truly unsettling is how it blends domestic fear with folklore horror. The safety of home slowly erodes. Walls feel thinner. Windows feel dishonest. Parenthood becomes a vulnerability, not a shield. The forest understands this. It doesn't rush. It tests boundaries, probing for weakness. Ask yourself, how far would you go to protect your child if the threat didn't have a face? The creatures here are never fully explained, and that restraint is its greatest strength. They feel ancient, rooted in the soil, shaped by belief rather than biology. Not monsters that scream for attention, but ones that wait until you're exhausted. Divided, unsure of your own judgment. And isn't that when fear works best? As paranoia grows, so does isolation. The forest cuts the family off not just physically, but culturally. Local warnings feel irrational until they don't. Science and logic begin to fail, replaced by rituals that feel embarrassing to believe in, until belief becomes survival. Have you ever dismissed a warning because it didn't fit your worldview? There's a moment when you realize the forest isn't attacking, it's enforcing. You've broken an agreement you never knew you made. And once that truth settles in, every decision feels heavier. Stay and fight, or leave and lose something you can never replace. The horror doesn't come from jump scares, it comes from impossible choices. By the time the Hallow reaches its climax, the forest no longer feels external. It's inside the house, inside the family, inside the viewer. It asks a quiet, disturbing question. What if the land doesn't belong to us, and never did? When the final scene fades, the forest doesn't vanish. It stays in your thoughts, especially when the night outside your window feels a little too quiet. So tell me, do you believe some places should be left untouched? And if your home stood on forbidden ground, would you stay, or would you run? Share your thoughts below. 5. Backcountry, 2014. A romantic trip into the wilderness turns into a fight for survival, when the forest reminds you that love means nothing to nature. There's something comforting about maps, isn't there? Lines, trails, symbols that promise control. Backcountry begins with that quiet confidence, the belief that preparation equals safety. A couple heads into the Canadian wilderness seeking isolation, intimacy, escape, just trees, lakes, fresh air. But what happens when the map is wrong, and the forest doesn't care how much you love each other? At first, the woods feel neutral, beautiful, even, the kind of place where silence feels earned. But slowly, almost politely, the forest removes your advantages. Landmarks disappear, distances stretch, the sun sets faster than expected, and suddenly, the idea of being alone together doesn't feel romantic anymore. Have you ever noticed how quickly peace turns into panic when you don't know where you are? What makes backcountry devastating isn't mystery or monsters, it's realism. The forest doesn't stalk them with intention. It simply exists. Hungry animals, endless terrain, cold nights. This is horror stripped bare, where survival depends on choices, endurance, and luck. And luck, out here, is rare. As tension builds, you feel the weight of every step, every argument, every moment wasted. Then comes the moment that changes everything. No dramatic build-up, no warning music, just sudden, brutal violence that feels horrifyingly plausible. It's a reminder that nature doesn't announce its attacks. It doesn't negotiate, it acts. Watching it unfold, you're forced into an uncomfortable question. Would I know what to do, or would I freeze? The forest in backcountry becomes an emotional amplifier. Fear magnifies love. Love sharpens fear. Every decision feels heavier because someone else's life depends on it. You're not just trying to survive, you're trying not to fail the person beside you. And that pressure is suffocating. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to realize trust can't replace experience? As the film continues, the wilderness feels endless, uncaring, almost cruel in its indifference. There are no villains to blame, no curses to break, only exhaustion, pain, and the slow understanding that survival may demand sacrifices you never imagined making. The forest doesn't chase them, but it doesn't let go either. What lingers after backcountry ends isn't fear, it's respect. Respect for how small we really are when stripped of technology and certainty. The film leaves you quiet, reflective, maybe even a little shaken. Next time you see a trailhead or an open forest road, you might hesitate before stepping in. So tell me, do you think backcountry is scarier than supernatural horror because it could actually happen? And if you were out there, lost and exposed, would you stay calm, or would fear take over? Share your thoughts in the comments. 6. The Ruins, 2008. A forgotten ruin hidden beyond the forest promises adventure, until the ground itself decides you're not allowed to leave. It begins with curiosity, that quiet, dangerous instinct that whispers, just a little farther. In the ruins, the forest doesn't feel hostile at first. It feels like a gateway. Dense, hot, alive, a path leading to something ancient and irresistible. A group of travelers follows it without fear. Because why would they be afraid? Haven't we all believed that danger always announces itself? The moment they reach the ruin, something feels wrong, but not in a way you can explain. The air is heavy. The silence feels deliberate. Locals stand at a distance, watching, armed, unblinking, no warnings, no explanations, just a clear message written in fear. And once the truth settles in, the horror tightens its grip. This isn't a place you explore. It's a place that traps. What makes the ruins unforgettable is how it turns nature itself into the antagonist. Not animals, not spirits, something quieter, something patient. The plants don't rush, they don't scream, they wait, growing slowly, intelligently, almost cruelly. Have you ever felt your own body betray you? That's the terror this film leans into, your skin, your breath, your instincts turning against you. As desperation sets in, the ruin becomes a pressure cooker. The sun burns, water disappears, injuries worsen, every attempt to escape fails. Not because the characters are foolish, but because the environment is mercilessly precise. There's no safe choice, only bad ones and worse ones. Watching it unfold, you're forced to ask yourself, how long could I stay rational if my body was under siege? The forest surrounding the ruin feels complicit, like a silent accomplice. It hides the location, it swallows sound, it ensures isolation, and as the group fractures under stress, fear becomes contagious, paranoia spreads faster than hope, pain becomes a constant companion. This isn't a film about heroism, it's about endurance, and how fragile it really is. What truly unsettles is how the ruins removes the comfort of meaning. There's no lesson to be learned, no rule to decode. The threat doesn't negotiate or explain itself. It simply exists, and that randomness is terrifying. Because if there's no reason, there's no solution, just survival, until there isn't. By the final act, the ruin no longer feels like a place, it feels like a sentence. The characters are judged not by morality, but by biology, and when hope finally collapses, it does so quietly, without drama, leaving you with a hollow, sinking feeling. After the film ends, you might find yourself uneasy around overgrown places. Vines, cracks in walls, roots breaking through concrete, because the ruins plants an idea you can't easily remove. What if nature doesn't need us, and never did? So let me ask you, do you think the ruins is scarier because the threat is alive? Or because it's indifferent? And if you were trapped there, how long do you think you'd last? Let me know in the comments. 7. Calvaire, 2004. A broken-down van leads a lost traveler into a forest village where kindness feels forced, and leaving may no longer be an option. The road disappears before the fear arrives. In Calvaire, the forest doesn't announce itself with darkness or storms. It welcomes you with politeness. Smiles linger too long. Help comes too quickly. A stranded singer accepts shelter. Grateful, relieved. Because what else would you do when night is falling and the woods are closing in? But tell me this. Have you ever sensed that something was wrong? Even while everyone insisted it wasn't? This forest feels suffocating not because it traps you physically, but because it absorbs you socially. The trees press close. The village feels sealed off from time. And every path seems to curve back on itself. You don't hear threats. You hear hospitality. And that's where the unease begins. In Calvaire, horror is served warm, with a smile. And by the time you taste the bitterness, it's already too late. What makes this film so disturbing is its slow erosion of identity. The forest doesn't chase, it reshapes. It allows the villagers' delusions to grow unchecked, feeding on grief, loneliness, and obsession. Reality bends here, not with magic, but with shared madness. Watching it unfold, you're left asking, how do you escape a place that refuses to see you as who you are? There's a raw, animal quality to the fear in Calvaire. Mud, sweat, breath. The forest feels complicit, hiding screams, swallowing direction, turning every escape into another cruel loop. The deeper you go, the more the rules dissolve. Logic becomes useless. Sympathy becomes dangerous. Even resistance feels futile, because the environment itself seems to support the delusion. Have you ever felt outnumbered not by people, but by belief? The film never rushes its cruelty. It lingers. It lets discomfort fester. Scenes stretch just long enough for you to feel trapped alongside the protagonist. Desperate for someone, anyone, to acknowledge the horror for what it is. But no one does, and that denial cuts deeper than violence ever could. What truly haunts after Calvaire is how plausible it feels. Not the events themselves, but the psychology behind them. Isolation breeds distortion. Grief demands replacement, and when a community agrees on a lie, the truth becomes the intruder. The forest doesn't correct this imbalance, it protects it. By the end, escape feels less like freedom and more like survival by accident. You're left shaken, uneasy, questioning how thin the line really is between safety and captivity. The trees fade from view, but the sensation remains. That being welcomed might be more dangerous than being threatened. So let me ask you, what scares you more? Violence you can see coming, or kindness that hides an agenda? And if you were lost in that forest, would you trust the people offering help, or would you run? Share your thoughts below. 8. Wrong turn. 2003. A single wrong turn off a forest road leads to a nightmare where the woods hide hunters, and you were never meant to leave alive. It starts with confidence, a shortcut, a belief that you know better than the map. In Wrong Turn, the forest doesn't lure you with mystery or beauty, it traps you with convenience. One detour feels harmless, even smart, but haven't we all learned too late that the fastest route is often the deadliest one? The woods here feel thick, crowded, hostile. Trees lean inward like they're listening. Roads narrow until escape feels theoretical. And then the truth reveals itself, not with subtlety, but with brutality. This forest isn't empty, it's occupied, and the ones who live here don't see you as a guest. They see you as meat. What makes Wrong Turn so effective is how it weaponizes isolation. No cell signal, no passing cars, no one to hear you scream except the forest itself, and it doesn't care. Civilization feels like a forgotten myth. As panic sets in, survival instincts take over, and fear becomes physical. Your breath shortens, your vision narrows. Watching it, you can almost feel your own pulse racing. Be honest. How long do you think you'd last out there? Unlike folklore horror or psychological dread, Wrong Turn is primal. It strips characters down to movement, reaction, and pain. The killers feel grotesque not just in appearance, but in how naturally they belong to this environment. The forest protects them. It hides their paths. It teaches them patience. This isn't a chase, it's a hunt. And the terrain always favors the ones who know it best. There's a cruel rhythm to the violence. It comes suddenly, without warning, reminding you that the forest doesn't follow cinematic rules. Death isn't poetic here. It's fast, ugly, and unforgiving. The film doesn't ask you to admire bravery, it dares you to imagine your own mistakes. Would you run? Would you hide? Or would panic betray you before the hunters ever arrive? What lingers isn't just fear, but paranoia. Every rustle feels intentional. Every shadow feels watched. Wrong Turn taps into a universal nightmare, being somewhere you don't belong. Surrounded by people who want you gone, and knowing no one will come to help. The forest becomes a boundary between the world you know and a reality where mercy doesn't exist. By the time the survivors fight back, you realize something unsettling. The forest has already changed them. Violence becomes language, survival becomes instinct, and even if you escape, you don't truly leave the woods behind. They stay with you, in the way you look at empty roads, dense trees, and tempting shortcuts. So let me ask you, what scares you more? Monsters born of legend, or humans shaped by isolation and cruelty? And next time you're driving through the woods, would you trust the shortcut or stay on the road? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. 9. Antlers, 2021, deep in a snow-choked forest town. Something ancient feeds on hunger and grief, and it's already inside the house. Before the creature ever shows its face, Antlers lets you feel it. The forest stands cold and patient, ribs of trees cutting into gray skies, as if the land itself is holding its breath. There's a child at the center of this story, quiet in a way that feels wrong. You sense it immediately, don't you? That feeling when silence isn't peace, it's concealment. Something is being hidden, and the woods already know what it is. This forest isn't loud or aggressive. It looms. It watches. It surrounds a struggling town where pain has settled into daily life like dust. Addiction, poverty, neglect. The horror here doesn't arrive from nowhere, it grows from suffering. And that's what makes Antlers unsettling. The monster doesn't feel summoned. It feels inevitable. Ask yourself this. When a place is built on trauma, what kind of things does it attract? As the story unfolds, folklore slips quietly into reality. Old legends resurface, not as myths, but as warnings ignored for too long. The forest becomes a keeper of memory, a place where ancient rules still apply even if no one remembers them. The creature that stalks these woods isn't just hunting bodies, it feeds on despair, on silence, on wounds left untreated. Watching it, you're forced to wonder, is the monster the cause, or the consequence? What gives Antlers its emotional weight is how closely horror is tied to compassion. The adults want to help, but they're broken themselves. The child wants to survive, but survival has a cost no one should have to pay. The forest presses in on all of them, tightening the space where hope might exist. Every scene feels heavy, like walking through deep snow, each step slower, harder, more exhausting than the last. When violence comes, it's brutal and tragic, not thrilling. There's no sense of victory here, only damage control. The forest doesn't care who deserves to suffer. It only enforces balance, according to rules far older than morality. And once those rules are broken, something must be fed. Have you ever felt that kind of dread, the sense that something terrible isn't chasing you, it's already waiting? By the final act, Antlers becomes less about fighting the monster and more about facing inherited pain. The woods don't let you look away. They force confrontation. And even when the immediate threat is gone, the damage remains, etched into memory, into land, into bloodlines. When the film ends, the forest still feels present, quiet, cold, watching. It leaves you with an uncomfortable thought. Maybe monsters don't come from the woods at all. Maybe the woods just give them space to grow. So tell me, do you see Antlers as a creature feature? Or as a story about trauma taking shape? And if you knew something ancient was feeding nearby, would you face it, or pretend you never saw the signs? Share your thoughts in the comments. 10. The Forest, 2016. A search for a lost twin turns into a slow, suffocating descent where the forest doesn't just hide the dead, it remembers them. Before the first ghost ever appears, the silence grabs you by the throat. Aokigahara Forest isn't loud, it doesn't scream for attention. And that's what makes it terrifying. It waits, it listens, and when Sarah steps into it, following the faint hope that her twin sister might still be alive, you can almost feel the forest leaning in, curious about how long she'll last. This isn't a movie that rushes to scare you. Instead, the forest lets dread seep in like cold fog through your shoes. Sarah arrives in Japan with grief weighing heavier than her backpack. Driven by guilt and that dangerous thought we've all had at least once. What if I had arrived sooner? The forest seems to sense that weakness immediately. Paths twist just slightly wrong. Sounds echo where they shouldn't. And every step forward feels like a mistake you can't undo. What makes the horror work isn't just the ghosts, it's the psychological erosion. The forest doesn't chase Sarah, it isolates her. It whispers doubt into her decisions. When she hears her sister's voice, you're forced to ask yourself, would I follow it too? Or would you turn back, knowing that hope can be the deadliest trap of all? As night falls, the movie tightens its grip. The trees feel closer, the darkness thicker, time itself starts to lose meaning. Sarah's fear isn't explosive, it's intimate. You watch it flicker behind her eyes, growing stronger every time she chooses emotion over logic. And honestly, can you blame her? Losing a twin is losing a part of your own reflection. The forest simply uses that wound to crawl inside. The forest also plays with a chilling idea. What if places remember pain? Not just as history, but as energy. Every soul lost here leaves a trace. And Sarah isn't just walking through trees, she's walking through unresolved despair. That thought lingers long after the credits roll, making you rethink every haunted place you've ever heard about. By the final act, fear and grief are completely intertwined. You're no longer sure whether Sarah is running from the forest, the spirits, or herself, and that uncertainty is the film's sharpest weapon. So here's the question for you. If you knew a place was built on sorrow, would you still enter it for someone you love? Or would you accept that some forests are better left undisturbed? Let me know in the comments, because this is one horror movie that doesn't end when you leave the woods. And just like Sarah, we step back out of the trees, but the forest doesn't really let us go. From ancient rituals to wrong turns that can't be undone, every film on this list reminds us that the woods are never just woods. They listen, they remember, and sometimes, they follow you home. So tell me, which of these deadly forests would you dare to enter? And which one would break you first? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next path we take might be even more dangerous.